Hey, welcome back. When I first got the Ableton Move, I made a video breaking down some of the hidden features that I had found that I hadn't heard a lot of people talking about, and a little wish list of items that I was hoping to see come in future firmware updates. And since then, there's been quite a lot of development. Really, almost everything actually has been addressed. The features and improvements that we're seeing in these updates are really, in some cases, pretty amazing. And I just want to highlight some of them. And then there are just a few things from my initial wish list that aren't yet on the Move. We'll see whether they ever get there or not. So since the Move came out, there's been about 4 major releases. There's been more releases than that, but a lot of those have just been like bug fixes, like little things. And then when the Move initially came out, I believe the 1.1.2 update was already ready for people. Like as soon as they got it, there was a firmware update to run. That was where we saw like 16 pitches introduced, the arpeggiator and the control live mode. So really, I'm considering 1.1.2 as like the stock firmware, the firmware that sort of shipped with it. So yeah, since then, about 4 major releases, and I just want to highlight some of the things out of those releases that I think make a big difference. The 1.2 update saw some improvements to MIDI, but I don't think they were actually that groundbreaking, especially compared to some of the MIDI updates that we see later, like in the 1.5 update. So I think we'll just skip over that for right now. The one change that jumped out to me was actually a small improvement to how the browser behaved when you're building racks. I think it was basically just like jumping back and forth and starting over at the top of a menu every time that you went to build out a rack. Now it sort of stays persistent. It remembers where you were, and it just is a lot less menu diving. Also added the Hoover preset for drift, which is, shout out to the Alpha Juno. All right, and then 1.3 update. One thing that I hadn't, even been thinking when I made my initial list of improvements was sampling via USB-C, but they gave it to us here. It's cool. It's a cool thing, particularly if you're able to hook this up with your phone sort of seamlessly and just take that audio. It really speaks to the sort of modern samplist's palette being the mobile phone, right? That there are crate diggers, there are record stores and things like that, but the media that we're inundated with is in our pocket. And so being able to reach out, plug that into the sampler, grab it, manipulate it, that's cool. We also got the ability to solo tracks, shift plus mute. That's great. Another sort of small workflow improvement is scrolling titles on the display for longer preset names. And then I think in this update is when we were able to do polyphonic aftertouch out via MIDI. That is pretty cool. Though I will say that, at this point in the firmware, we weren't able to select the MIDI channel for each track. So that really limited how you could use this as a controller for external hardware. So the polyphonic aftertouch out, that was neat, but yeah, it didn't really change the fact that there were these other limitations with MIDI that were holding the device back. All right, the 1.4 update gives us the 4th layout for the pads, which is one of those things that I think I completely missed in my initial video of improvements, because the 4th layout is what's on the push, and it was something that I had grown very familiar with and didn't realize how much I missed it on the Move until they gave it to us in the 1.4 update. I'm very happy that they did that. There's just a lot that you can do with the sort of shapes and just the more ergonomic design of the 4th layout. If you're unfamiliar with that, there's some great videos about building chords on the push that would now apply to building chords on the Move. There were a couple other improvements that were listed in the release notes for this 1.4 update, and I've got to say that I haven't really fully internalized those. I don't really use those things. So like quick add new clip, per pad quantization, and something about changing or setting the note length, which sounds very useful, but I must be doing something wrong. Pressing and holding the step and then pressing the end step, I'm messing it up somehow. So if you know what that improvement was or what that change was and how best to utilize it, drop a comment below, I guess. Okay, and then the big one, the big update, 1.5. This one really packed in so many things all in one, and things that I had been asking for and other people had been asking for kind of since we had first gotten the Move. Very first, I'll just say auto filter. I had talked about it in my video that when jamming, when sketching out ideas, when performing with the Move, the ability to have a filter on the main track that you can do build-ups with, do breakdowns, just any type of global manipulation, that was missing, and it's really great to see that. It also kind of makes sense now. They were rebuilding auto filter so that it was something that could work on the Move and bringing some new features to Ableton Live in the 12.2 update. So yeah, I think that's very promising. I think that reveals how those teams are working together. They're working off of maybe a similar code base, and they're able to be responsive and push updates that are meaningful for Note, for Move, for Live, for Push. It's just really great to see that. All right, so then the feature that everyone was going kind of crazy about with the 1.5 update was the sample slicing. And I do really appreciate this. I think it makes the Move a much more compelling device for somebody like looking at what's in the marketplace and what they should spend their money on. Being able to sample on the device, slice on the device, and then, sequence those slices, perform those slices. That's bread and butter for a lot of people. So I think that makes a ton of sense. The implementation is still something that I'm sort of getting used to. It's in a sample rack. You need to preferably have an empty rack, because once you start slicing, it's going to overwrite other stuff in the rack. So, start off with an empty rack, bring in a sample on one of the pads, go into slice mode with the, I think it's the shift click on the wheel, and then go in from there and slice it up. And I think the slicing tools that are inside of there are great. And it's interesting because when you do that shift wheel press, it takes you to this sort of menu or sub menu. It doesn't drop you right into slice. And the thing that's interesting about that is just the possible implication of some other manipulation tool that would be coming to samples, so warp maybe, or who knows, any type of polyphonic sampler or something. Like, it's just interesting that it doesn't go straight into the slice mode. It gives you that menu with only one option right now. And then for me, the biggest improvement in the 1.5 update are the MIDI improvements. And the biggest thing is just so simple. It's just being able to set the MIDI channel per track. That lets the Move become the centerpiece, right? It makes it a brain for your setup. Being able to set MIDI out to 4 separate devices, being able to share those sequences between the internal sounds, the external sounds, being able to sync other devices that have their own sequencers or arpeggiators, that really makes this so viable as a DAW-less tool. And even if you're not like fully DAW-less, like that doesn't really matter. If you're integrating with software, if you're using like an iPad, if you're using just one other piece of hardware, all of a sudden now the Move is fully capable. It can fit into almost any setup, and it's really great to see Ableton deliver an update like this to unshackle the hardware, sort of let it reach its full potential. I'm making this video just about 9 months after I got the Move and after it was released. These are some pretty substantial updates, and I'm really excited to see what could be coming in the future. Now, that being said, there are some things from my initial video that still haven't been addressed in any of these updates. If you've already watched that video, I don't want to belabor why I think those updates would be good or what value they would bring. So I just want to run them down quickly here. We're still not seeing any like chance or random, any mutate or transform, any advanced sequencer options like that. Still haven't seen a mixer view for the encoders, something that would put the volume or pans across the top, either in session view or something that you could select even when you're inside of a track. Still no operator. Please, Ableton, if you're listening, I think that would be really cool. Now, we did see one of those previously unutilized icons become active. That was, I believe, on step 14, the new clip icon. So that does sort of confirm what we were maybe thinking, that there are some icons that are in the hardware that just are sort of waiting on the firmware to activate them. So still waiting on a couple. I think step 4, step 12, and step 13. I think those are lurking and sort of waiting to be activated. So that could be exciting. And then we still haven't seen any changes on the session view, chaining clips together or any type of follow actions, anything to make a sort of song mode. And then I wanted to add one new idea that I have for the Ableton Move that I would love to see implemented, and that's a user mode. In addition to the control live mode, which is excellent, I made a video about that, this would be a mode that's just fully customizable for whatever you want to do. Letting the user customize what each encoder sends, the CC value, the channel, setting a sort of scribble strip name for it that would show up on the display, maybe even setting note CC or other CC values for the pads or the step buttons or the channel select buttons. There's a lot of hardware on here that could be really interesting if there was a user mode that let you customize and use that screen to help the user remember what the customizations they've made are. That would allow you to set up other musical softwares as a controller, or who knows, in other parts of your workflow, whether it's like OBS, or you could set it up as a sort of grading tool in a video software or a photo software. The fact that it's on my desk every day makes me want to reach out and use it as often as I can. And it would be great to have this user mode to sort of continue the theme of taking full advantage of this hardware. If you have found anything that was interesting in the Ableton Move updates that I missed, drop a comment below. I would love to know what improvements or maybe even disappointments have really jumped out to you. But yeah, that's all I got for now. Thanks.